Outgunned and outmanned, Ukraine's president pushes for promised American aid.
I can tell you frankly, without this support, we'll have no chance of winning.
House Speaker Mike Johnson fights for that aid and his job. And Russia's attacks target Ukraine's energy infrastructure.
Will the rockets come into the city? Will they hit houses? What will happen the next day with heat, with water?
Welcome to PBS News Weekly. I'm Nick Schifrin. More than 2 years after Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukraine is short on munitions, men, and faces a future where the source of the vast majority of its weapons may no longer be a reliable source of support. This week, Amna Nawaz traveled to Ukraine for an exclusive interview with the country's president, Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
I want to ask you about Iran's attack on Israel because you condemned that attack immediately. You said it should serve as what you called a wake-up call to the free world. Who do you think needs that wake-up call, and what kind of action do you hope that elicits?
First, I believe this is a signal to all the leaders of the world. Surely, France, Jordan, the UK, the US have responded and supported the protection of Israel. And this is a serious defense shield for Israel, which is very important. Israel by itself wouldn't be able to protect against such a numerous, powerful strike. And here, definitely, they used air defense and aviation. Many things that, frankly speaking, Ukraine is lacking.
You're saying it sent a signal to see the allies come together, the US and UK and France and Jordan, along with Israel, repelling many hundred drones and missiles that were launched on Israel that day. In your joint address to the nation last night, you said the whole world saw what real defense is. The whole world saw that Israel was not alone in this defense. Do you think that the same message is being sent to the world about Ukraine?
I will give you one example, a very simple example. The Tripilska power plant. Electricity in the Kyiv region depends on it. 11 missiles were headed towards it. The first 7 we took down. 4 destroyed Tripilska. Why? Because we had 0 missiles. We ran out of all missiles. You know, when someone says that our allies cannot provide us with this or that weapon, or they cannot be in Ukraine with this or that force because that would be perceived as if Ukraine is engaging NATO in the war, well, after yesterday's attack, I want to ask you a question. Is Israel part of NATO or not? Here is the answer. Israel is not a NATO country. The NATO allies, including NATO countries, have been defending Israel. They showed the Iranian forces that Israel was not alone. And this is a lesson. This is a response to anyone on any continent who says you need to assist Ukraine very carefully so you don't engage NATO countries in the war.
You have said that if the U.S. Congress does not approve the aid that it's currently considering, which is some $60 billion that's been held up by Republican lawmakers, you said if that doesn't move forward, Ukraine will lose the war. If that aid does not move forward, how long do your troops have? Is this a matter of weeks or months? I mean, could they sustain a spring Russian offensive?
I can tell you frankly, without this support, we'll have no chance of winning. You need to be much stronger than your enemy. Today, our artillery shell ratio is 1 to 10. Can we hold our ground? No. In any case, with these statistics, they'll be pushing us back every day. To defend 100% of what's in our control, we would need to go from 1 to comparing numbers.
10 to 10.
Mr. President, as you know, there are those who say, look, the U.S. and the West armed Ukraine, trained Ukraine for a counteroffensive that was largely seen as a failure because you were unable to dislodge Russians from territory, and they don't believe additional aid would actually allow you to break through Russian defenses. It would, as you say, help you to preserve, to protect where things are right now. If it's this hard to get aid through the U.S. Congress right now, what leads you to believe it would be any easier next year, especially if Mr. Trump was reelected as president?
We don't think it will be easier for us. We're fighting. We're not thinking about next year. We're thinking about tomorrow. Our goals are much more about real life. We need to live tomorrow. What's going to happen next year? Well, frankly speaking, nobody knows because we don't understand what support Ukraine will have. What other explosions and wars might be happening in the world? What's going to happen in the U.S. Congress? They might make a decision, and I hope they are listening to us, and will make a decision in the nearest days or weeks, but not longer.
Mr. President, as you know, the Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson has said that he is likely to move forward this week to approve aid for Israel, but it's not yet clear if aid for Ukraine will be part of that effort or not.
It's strange.
Why is that strange to you?
Well, it means that this is not about security. It's pure politics, and it's a disgrace for the world and a disgrace for democracy. For those who only speak of democracy, it's just talk.
Why is it a disgrace? Why do you use that word?
Well, if the Congress will divide this assistance after everything that happened, will divide into Israeli and Ukrainian, then it means that this is a matter of elections in the United States. It's a matter of pure politics that now when the whole world is saying, how could Iran strike Israel? So now we need to support only Israel and forget what is happening in Ukraine. This is pure politics.
Have you spoken directly to House Speaker Mike Johnson?
2 times. I talked to him last year. I was visiting the United States. Specifically, I had a meeting with the Speaker, with the President, with the Congress. Then we had a meeting behind closed doors. They all agreed 100%, those who were at that meeting. They were saying there will be support, believe us, by the end of the year. We had a conversation with the Speaker over the phone, and he told me that he fully supports Ukraine receiving the support.
He said, yes, of course, he is supported to give defending aid. This package decision of Congress to Ukraine is very important, and etc. And what is very important, that those period, I also spoke with congressmen, a lot of them, many times, and all of them said to me that, yes, Ukraine will get. The question is, in days or some weeks, after that, months, and etc. And one important moment, the last one, when I spoke with a team of congressmen, they said, maybe it will be not cheap money. Maybe it will be, this...
Structured as a loan.
Yeah, loans, yeah.
And you are open to that?
I said, it doesn't matter for us for today. We wanted another way to get this money last year. But for today, it doesn't matter. We need to survive and we need to defend our people. And that's why your decision, the ball is on your field. Yes, please, just make decision.
What about the role of former President Trump in all of this? Because it is an election year. He has enormous influence over the Republican Party, where opposition to this aid lies. He's previously criticized U.S. aid to Ukraine. Do you believe that the former president is standing in the way of you getting the aid that you say you need?
I'm very careful about this, because voices from inside the circle, from someone during the elections, I think it's all a big question whether it's true or not. I will believe that the United States will not stop their support and we will be allies, and that the policy of the president, if the president changes, that's for the Americans to decide, but the policy of the president will not change, at least as it relates to Ukraine. That's important to us.
Russia right now has you outmanned, outgunned, and they believe they can outlast you and Western attention. Is it time to think about negotiating a settlement?
We have offered the peace formula to the world. Currently, there are already first steps with specifics. In mid-June, there will be a peace summit in Switzerland, and there we will prepare and elaborate on a plan to end this war. This summit will take place without Russia, for Russia not to block this plan. Currently, Russia wants to destroy us all. Currently, Russia wants no negotiations. That is why the initiative should come from Ukraine, the country that wants to end this war in a fair peace.
But given the conditions right now, given the challenges that you face, we've uncertainty of foreign aid, advancing Russian forces, your own critical shortages, a major mobilization shortage, and a shifting global landscape in which you worry Ukraine is moving further down the agenda. Some would say those are impossible odds to overcome. If you don't start to negotiate now, won't conditions just get worse?
I'm ready to negotiate now with you or with such people who really want peace. You understand?
Not with Russia.
But he doesn't want, especially Putin. All their narratives, the documents from our intelligence, what they discuss about, we have it from our intelligence, we have it from the United States, they know everything the same. So we understand that he's not ready for any negotiations. He doesn't want. He's not interested. For him, this is not victory. He needs victory. And for him, victory is to destroy Ukraine.
So how would you like us to talk to a person who's willing to kill you, simply kill you? He's saying either you're a part of Russia or we'll destroy you all. There are voices coming from the West saying that we are afraid. What's going to happen to Russia if Russia loses? So are they not afraid that we are dying here every day? But they're very afraid that there will be some sort of a danger, some sort of a migration crisis? What's going to happen? Maybe China will be very strong. And if Russia will panic and have a revolution, then China will capture part of the territory of Russia, etc. So everyone is afraid. God forbid China will be strong. God forbid there would be no Putin and there will be many countries. What's going to happen to Russia's nuclear weapons? As of now, the West controls the nuclear weapons. So that's what I'm talking about. All those voices, all those messages, all of this is the disgrace that I was talking about.
You have said that this is not just a fight for Ukraine's future, but for democracy's future. That also includes the future of your own children, right? Your daughter, Alexandra, your son, Kirilo is his name, right? He's now 11 years old.
Yes.
I know you're separated from them, but when you do speak to them, what do they ask you about this war, and what do you tell them?
I sometimes look at our children, and not only my own children, but the children of those families at war and those children currently in Ukraine. I think they know all the answers. And frankly speaking, if they would be answering your questions today, who knows? Maybe they would be wiser. They're very grown up. They've been through a lot. They understand everything and they know everything. When they ask questions, they still ask in a childlike way. It's not a question of when this war is going to end. They understand that it depends on many factors, and it's not a question of whether Ukraine will be able to withstand this fight. They know it depends on many things, but Ukraine will definitely withstand. They are very strong. I'd say they're much more confident than some of our partners. And sometimes they ask the question, when can we live together again, Dad?
President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, thank you so much for hosting us here and for your time, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you that you are here.
The U.S. funding that President Biden has promised, long stalled in Congress, may soon learn its fate. Johnson is juggling legislation that would approve urgently needed military aid to Ukraine and Israel. But by doing so, he's opened himself up to members of his own party who threaten his job. Lisa Desjardins breaks down Johnson's challenge.
Thank you, Mr. Leader.
After 6 cautious months,
it's a big day on Capitol Hill, and
Mike Johnson is now defining and risking his speakership with a high-stakes push to aid Ukraine and Israel.
I put out a preliminary plan, as you all know, on these measures to handle these matters from Israel to Ukraine to the Indo-Pacific region.
It's a big move, with reporters waiting for details, closely watching Johnson's fellow Republicans, after Thomas Massie of Kentucky called for Johnson to resign and said he supports a motion to vacate or oust Johnson, introduced by fellow Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, I'm not going to call the motion to vacate, but I will tell you that if it is called, there will be a lot of people who vote for it.
Massie says Johnson is helping Democrats. But today, most House Republicans, even rebellious types, backed Johnson as Speaker.
I respect Thomas, but I disagree with that. The last thing this country needs is to throw a Speaker out.
It's a total waste of time and absolute ridiculous concept.
If we're going to identify a problem with Mike Johnson, and I understand, but you have to have a solution. So who are we going to put in there then?
As Republicans flirt again with chaos, allies are fighting to survive. Israel is on alert after weathering an extensive attack from Iran. And Ukraine is getting outshot by Russia, sometimes 10-1.
On this vote, the yeas are 70.
That aid has been paralyzed after the Senate overwhelmingly passed $95 billion worth in February. That large Senate bill has funds for Ukraine, Israel, the Indo-Pacific, and humanitarian aid, but it's unpopular with House Republicans. Instead, Johnson would pass 4 separate bills that seem to add up to roughly the same amount, but with more loans and less grants to Ukraine. Also included legislation about TikTok and humanitarian aid, though the amount for that isn't clear. In this blur, Johnson is direct about his job. He's not resigning.
We're gonna work this out.
But it's not clear who or what survives, as Johnson gambles that his resolve will not backfire.
We're in unprecedented times, okay? We're in dangerous times, as has been articulated here, around the world, and here at home. We need steady leadership. We need steady hands at the wheel.
But let's start, Lisa, with Ukraine aid, because for weeks now, President Biden has been saying if the House Speaker just brings this bill to the floor, it will pass. Is that still the case?
Unclear. But I will say it wasn't even for sure that he would bring this to the floor. This has been an indecisive speaker. This is the defining moment of his speakership so far. But he does face major hurdles in all of these bills. Let's go through some of the challenges that Speaker Johnson faces in the House. First of all, there are some Republicans who oppose all funding to Ukraine. I am told many of them, when they were in their districts last week, heard that from constituents. Also, there are some who want more oversight in the bill of Ukraine than the Senate was willing to give on Israel. Now, there are some in both parties that would like conditions on Israeli aid. That is very complicated. And then we have the border, yet another simple, not at all simple issue. Some Republicans are demanding that there be border security elements in these bills before they can vote for any of this. So essentially, Johnson has 2 options now, trying to get all this passed this week. The easy way, which would be with House Republican support, get all this onto the floor, get some amendments, have some debate. But Republicans may not even agree with that. So then he's got the hard way. He needs 2/3 vote of the House, which would include Democrats. If he includes Democrats to pass these things, then his speakership is on the line.
Well, how close is he right now to being ousted?
That's the right question. Incredibly close. By my count, knowing just the 2 who support motion to vacate right now, 216 votes to keep him, 215 votes potentially to oust him. Just 1 vote. And I know at least 1 Republican who is thinking about also voting to oust him. Now, one of the issues here, of course, is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I just spoke with her a short time ago. My sense is that she is not ready to pull this trigger this week. She is trying to push this off. That can change any day. Now, if they do put this motion to vacate on the floor, as you well know, someone that can save Speaker Johnson, House Democrats. However, a theory running around now is House Democrats also potentially, if the math works out, have the power to install Hakeem Jeffries as the Speaker of the House. I asked them about this today, and they said essentially if they have the ability to do it, they very well may.
Look, I think I feel very confident speaking for the Democratic caucus that we want Hakeem Jeffries to be Speaker. Whether that happens in this calendar year or in January, that's the focus. Mathematically, it's possible.
This is some high-level game theory in a way. I don't know if you've The Prisoner's Dilemma. There's a reality show called The Prisoners. Who do you trust? Who's lying? Who wants to make deals with who? It is not clear right now. The difference with this high-level game theory, however, of course, is the stakes are impossibly high for this country, for Ukraine, and for Republicans.
Lisa Desjardins, thanks to you as always.
Welcome.
This week, President Biden endorsed Johnson's plan and called on the House and Senate to pass it. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, Russia launched a series of deliberate and devastating attacks on the country's energy infrastructure. Taking advantage of gaps and shortages in Ukraine's air defenses, Russia systematically targeted nearly every single power plant in the country. Officials told Amna Nawaz that the past few weeks have been unlike any they've seen before in this war.
An idyllic scene in the city of Ukrainka, just outside of Kyiv. But the Russian attack here just 3 days earlier is fresh in Gennadi's mind.
It was about 5 a.m. Everybody woke up because it was a massive explosion, and then a few more explosions.
The 64-year-old local builder struggles to describe the moment.
You need to hear it to understand it. You need to live through it.
The airstrikes destroyed their target, the Tripilska power plant, one of the country's largest power plants and the main electricity source for 3 million people in the Kyiv region and surrounding areas. It's also the center of this city's livelihood.
More than half the city's population works at the power plant.
19-year-old Alina has lived here her whole life. She had a clear view of the attack and aftermath from her window at home.
What did you think when you heard those explosions that night?
What's going to happen in the city? Will the rockets come into the city? Will they hit houses? What will happen the next day with heat, with water?
In the early morning hours of April 11th, Trypilska was one of multiple power plants hit by the Russians. That followed a March 29th attack on other power plants, which followed March 22nd strikes also targeting Ukraine's energy system.
They try, they test, they see the results and just repeat.
Dmytro Sakharov is executive director of DTEK, Ukraine's largest private energy company. He says Russia has attacked power plants earlier in the war, but this year is different.
The efficiency these days, unfortunately, is higher because of Russians develop their skills. This is basically the third year of war. They improve the technology. They, I guess, install some more advanced guiding systems.
When you say efficiency, you mean they're more efficient at causing more damage to
Causing more damage, yeah.
So far, an estimated 60% of Ukraine's power generating capacity may have already been impacted by Russian drones and missiles. Rolling blackouts have been imposed in several areas.
Everything was different.
President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says Ukraine's inability to defend its energy infrastructure is a microcosm of larger battlefield challenges as they face a critical artillery and air defense shortage. At the Trypilska plant, he tells us, his forces intercepted 7 of 11 Russian missiles, but they were 4 missiles short of saving the plant.
When you're running out of missiles, people are dying. Trypilska is just the most recent small example of a large challenge.
They were 4 missiles short. That is what made the difference between protecting that plant and that plant being destroyed. How often do you find yourself in that situation?
I guess all our plants were in the same situation, where partially the incoming missiles were intercepted and second wave or another part were not. And they just hit the target.
Sakharov now keeps a flak jacket for facility visits. His teams have been issued the same.
Like soldiers, basically, they have helmets, they have vests, even some armored vehicles.
They're like soldiers on their own front line then?
We call it energy front line.
For Alina, who lives on that front line, Russia's mission is clear.
To destroy our nation, to destroy our moral spirit. But they won't succeed at all.
They won't succeed. Why not?
Because they attacked the wrong people. We are much stronger than them. We have morals and less fear than them.
Gennady says he was turned away twice from the military recruitment center past their age 60 cutoff.
When people are dying, when children are dying, women, how could you not be worried? As a father, I'm worried for my children.
This is hard for you to talk about.
Well, you can hear it in my voice.
This father is now bracing to send his own son to fight in a war that's already come to their home.
We understand what it's like to be without lights, without water, but we will survive. They don't understand that.
Among Russian attacks this week, deadly missile strikes on the northern town of Chernihiv that left at least 17 people dead. Amna Nawaz spoke with Jeff Bennett about the struggle of Ukrainian cities that are increasingly vulnerable.
President Zelenskyy was actually just in this city of Chernihiv a couple of weeks ago, sort of underscoring how crucial it is to be protecting these border cities with Russia. We got a frontline view of what life is like in one of those cities today. We went to the northern city of Kharkiv. It sits just 19 miles from the Russian border, and it is Ukraine's second largest city. Kharkiv has been hit consistently and relentlessly since the Russian full-scale invasion over 2 years ago, and officials and residents tell us those attacks have been ramping up in recent weeks. As you walk around, the city landscape, Jeff, is just peppered with piles of debris and damaged buildings and rubble and boarded up windows. And even now, there's Russian aerial bombs, there's modified missiles, and there's drones. And because of their proximity to the Russian border, the time that it takes from something to leave a launch site in Russia and hit the ground in Kharkiv can be less than a minute. Even during our time on the ground today, there were multiple air alerts, sirens, and that was just over the course of a single day. Jeff?
Well, after more than 2 years of that, how are residents there faring?
You know, the cumulative toll is really starting to take hold. We heard that from a young woman we met named Lisa, who is 20 years old. She's lived in Kharkiv her whole life. Like many who lived there, they fled after the Russian invasion and the initial bombardment of the city. They went to western Ukraine. But after a few months, she came back. And when I asked her why, she said she missed her home. But she also said if she had to be considering whether she was going to live or die each day, she'd rather do it in a place that she knew and loved. But she told us a little bit about what she called this new normal of living in this border city of Kharkiv. Here's what she said.
You wake up, you read news, like another bombarded plant, like 10 people are dead. So it's really depressing to know that it's happening right now, right here.
You know, Jeff, the fabric of just everyday life in Kharkiv and cities like it is really frayed right now. There's not just the threats of strikes and the loss of life that they have to cope with. A Kharkiv official told me that at this point in the war, Russian forces have now targeted every single piece of their infrastructure. That includes electrical and water and TV and radio and mobile lines. So they're enrolling blackouts right now because all of their power plants have been hit, and they say they lack the air defenses to properly actually protect them. The new wrinkle here is the growing concern that in the coming weeks or months ahead, there could be a potential for Russian forces to launch a ground invasion into Kharkiv. That's what residents are worried about right now. Jeff.
All right, Amna Nawaz and our team tonight in Kyiv. Amna, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
And from all of us here at PBS News Weekly, thanks so much for watching.